Hey guys, and welcome back. Do apologise, it's been months since I posted, but it's been busy with all COVID and everything else going on. But today I thought I'd bring you an updated Slipjoint collection. So I'm going to show you on the table in a second the entirety of my Slipjoint collection now, which has certainly grown since the last video I did. Probably doubled or tripled, I should think, but we'll go through a few of the options and just run through what I think of them and what sort of prices they're at and see what you guys think. Right, so the collection has certainly grown. Some of the knives in here are a bit controversial. One people would argue is a copy. There is a bit of an argument out on that one. I don't know the full verdict on it, but you guys might know better than me. A couple of them are things that I've modified myself. A couple are that they weren't UK legal and I've made them UK legal. A couple I've just modified and changed the scales or whatever else. But I'll go through and at least you've got some view of what you could do yourself or what you can just buy straight off the shelf. So we'll start with the Spyderco UKPK, which personally I'm not a big fan of this knife. It just leaves a lot to be desired. It's good for a little one-hand opener. It's very slicey, but for some reason I just can't get along with it. It finds its way into my pocket now and then for a day, but it's just not something that I would ever advise to someone to get. Certainly for the price of £65, there are much better options out there, much better options on this table for that sort of money. Then we've got the CRKT Desta, which from factory is not a slip joint. That little lock bar there on the back is what makes it lock into place usually, and you would pull that out of the way, but I've filed that so that it slips, and I've made the modification to make this a UK legal, so that now cannot lock, but putting a little bit of thumb pressure on the back of it does give it a little bit of tension that at least when you're holding it, it won't fold up on you. So it's a nice simple little mod that anyone could do, just popping the rivet out there and just having a little bit of a file on the back of there. I used my Dremel, but you could just do it with a file if you have the time and patience. I think that was around £16 on Henny Haynes for that one. Then we have the Boker War Trekker. This does come with a little pouch to make it into a neck knife, but it is UK legal because there is no lock and it is just a friction folder. Personally, probably my favourite friction folder that I own. I'm not usually one for the point on a knife. I prefer things that are more sheep's foot or Warncliffe's type style knives because they just speak to me a little bit more and they're a little less threatening. People don't tend to get a little up in arms when they see you using them just for cutting a bit of packaging open or whatever else. They're a little less offensive to people, but it's certainly an option. It is within the UK laws to carry within reason. Obviously that is something that with all of these you still have to have something of a reason to be carrying any knife at all in the UK. The laws there, you go and read up on it yourself. I'm not offering advice on any of that. It is just there for people to look into, but these are just slip joint options that fall within the certain guidelines that we're given. This is the Walther, I tend to say it's the MPK or something PK, something like that, but it's a nice little cheap knife. For what it is, I really quite like it. It's quite elegant. It's a bit of a gentleman style knife. It looks nice. A little bit clicky, but that little sort of mechanism on the back there is a tensioner. You can tighten and loosen that, but great little option. I think that's around £8, £10, somewhere around there, or it could be £12, but it's around that sort of margin. Quite a cheap, nice little knife. Again from Henny Haynes. I didn't mention that one, that's around £50 for that Boker War Trekker. So then we've got the Svord Peasant, which I put a little lanyard on the back of there. Again, just a nice and simple, cheap friction folder. These are around £16. I've seen people do a lot of mods with these, putting nicer scales on them or whatever else. A great little UK legal knife. lovely little option for something that if you want to go out in the woods and just have a little bit of a hack around with something that's nice and cheap, but it'll hold up to a little bit of abuse. It's a great little outdoor knife. I'd highly advise these to a lot of people. Really good little option, nice and easy to sharpen. One that I've modified myself. This is the Victorinox. I always forget, I think this is the Climber. So it's got, I've changed the scales on it and just epoxy resined them on, did a little bit of modifications. It's not the most beautiful work in the world, but it's something I just had to go at myself. Not something I tend to do very often, but I thought I'd give it a go. And I acid washed all of the inside tools and everything else. So you've got the little saw on there and everything. I believe it's either the hiker or it's either hiker or climber. It's one of those, but yeah, just something that I modified myself. Nice and easy to do. I just got a piece of brass sheet and just cut out the scale size, modified it. I even got the little parts to work, which a lot of people don't bother with those when they put new scales on. It is possible to do. There's a lot of faffing with it, but it works. I think the actual tool itself cost me, I think that was around £20, somewhere around it, and maybe £18, but then obviously the modifications and things in total with the epoxy resin, it's probably cost me in excess of about £30 to £40 in total to make it. Then we have the Black Fox Bean. Now these are lovely little knives. These are based on the Bean by Sergei Panchenko, which is that little SP on the back there, which it probably won't focus in on. But nice little ball detent knife, just slips over. You can get the proper Sergei Panchenko knives, which are very similar to this, but you're looking at in the multiples of hundreds. This little thing from Black Fox, who did the sort of mass-produced version, these are around £30, and they come in different scales and different ways. Then we'll go on to this one. This one is the Boker Worldwide. Now this thing is solid. It is extremely hard on the back spring. If you've got slightly weaker hands, you ain't getting this open and closed again. There are certain people that would argue that this doesn't really fall within the law, simply because the back spring is that tight that some police officers may deem it as an unnecessary carry, because it is about as close as you can get to locking without it locking. You have to use the palm of your hand to close it up. It's very difficult to do without basically ending up catching your fingers or anything. It is that tense. It's a lovely knife. It's quite a beefy bit of kit, good for a little bit of grunt work. I've carried it for work a few times and it's held up brilliantly, but I probably wouldn't carry it for a day-to-day. It's quite heavy as well. It's a hell of a piece of equipment to be carrying around. It's probably a bit more than what anyone needs for just general day-to-day pocket carry, but it does fall within the Slipjoint UK legal specifications, as we call them. I believe that is around £30 to £35 when you can find them. Then we've got the Keysmart Dapper 150. Now this is not something I was able to find very easily in the UK. I had to order these from America. I ordered a batch of them and passed them on to a few other people. But for a little elegant slip joint, something that would look great in a suit pocket, or it's quite unassuming really. It doesn't even look like a knife, but it's squared off ends. Quite a nice, it almost looks like a key fob more than anything else. It's a great little elegant design. There's no pocket clip, no way of hanging a lanyard on it, nothing like that. It's very sort of modern in design, I suppose you'd call it, but it's quite an interesting little piece. You do have the alternative Keysmart 100, which is the miniature version of this, which I wasn't going to put in this video simply because I'm going to do a keychain video and that's going to appear in there. So by comparison, you can see the size difference, but that has a little section on the back there to put on your keychain, whereas obviously this one doesn't. I believe they were around £20. It worked out to each when I managed to bulk buy them and say move the other ones on. Then we have the Gerber Jukebox. Now this thing, again, was not a UK legal, but I bent over the backs, the locking frame lock, or not frame lock, the liner lock. I took apart all the scales, bent it over so that it won't now engage. So it will not lock, but the action of putting my thumb on the back there keeps it nice and solid. So it can be used as a UK legal friction folder. So it works out great, it does its trick, but it does took a little bit of modifying to get it in that condition so that it can be carried UK legal. Personally, I love the sort of cleaver style, or what, there's a bit of a mixture of a couple of different styles that you would possibly call that, but it's one of my favourite styles of blade shape. But that's one of the options, and I believe that was around £35. Then we have the Kershaw Decoy. Again, this had a little frame lock on it, but because it has a little bit of tang hanging over on the back there, I bent the frame lock out the way and it becomes a UK legal friction folder. After carrying this for one day, I stopped altogether because I realised that whether you do that modification or not, you put this in your pocket and this little tiny clasp there, you slide those out and you've got a little pair of tweezers on the back, which are all well and good, handy little bit of tool to have, but when you pull that out, the pocket that you've got in there will punch up and actually pull that, well sorry, as you put it into your pocket it will push that out. So even if it is just that little bit, next time you go to reach your pocket you'll find yourself jabbing yourself on the end of them tweezers. So this one's really due for the bin, but it's just one to add to a collection. I wouldn't advise it, but it is something that can be a cheap little modification knife. It has the tweezers on there, which could be could appeal to some people. I believe you're looking at around £16 to £20, I think it was for that. It might have been a little bit cheaper still. This one is a bit of a personal favourite. This is the Nekami EK3RC, which is the carbon fibre version. They do a few different models of this. They do it in a copper and a titanium, but nice little slip joint. But the added bonus of this is that it has the little flecks in there which are glow in the dark, and it looks absolutely beautiful when you do put a bit of light on it. This was sent to me by Nekami to review months ago. I've had it in the collection since. I believe I did a separate video on this altogether, but it's a lovely bit of kit. That's my dog coming over there. I believe to buy they are around £115, give or take, somewhere around there. Then we have the Boker Rival, I believe this one is. So another little slip joint. I think this was, if I remember rightly, this was £22 from Henny Haynes. They do a backlock version, which a little bit of metal there does sort of suggest it's like a backlock, but it's not. This is just the slip joint version. But yeah, for about £20, this is a great little UK legal option. Again, I've used this for work a few times. It's a great little knife, holds up quite well. Great little deep carry pocket clip and everything else. This hits a lot of points for a lot of people. Being Book as well, it's quite well made, even though I believe it's one of the Chinese ones. Oh, sorry, no, I'm saying that. It does actually say Book USA on it, so that probably explains that. So, good little option there. Very cheap little knife. We've got the Rough Rider Cowboy. I believe this was around £10. I didn't like the Cowboy scales on it, so I just took them to the grinder and ground them down. So just like got a little brass handled knife, just for a little slip joint. Very basic, very old fashioned looking, but it does the trick for what I want. Then we have the Victorinox. Now I can never remember the name of these. They're just the basic one. Just I've only included it just because in a UK legal video you've got to really show a Victorinox. I'm ashamed to say I didn't actually own a proper Victorinox when I did the last video. I only owned some cheap versions, so I've since seen to my ways, and I've got a few, but a couple of them are little pocket ones, little keychain ones, which will be in a different video. But just a nice little basic knife with a little bottle opener on there. Great little option. Something that's probably around £13, but they are, for as cheap and flimsy as they feel, they do hold up to quite a lot, and they are good little options. For myself, I do tend to hardware a lot of my knives. When I put them to use, I don't go too steady on them. Despite how good of condition a lot of these look, you've seen that a lot of the blades don't look too polished or anything else, because they've seen their fair share of dirt, and I don't particularly polish them up, but I still look after them to a degree. This isn't a production knife. This is something that someone bought me back recently from abroad. It's just a little toothpick knife, but I just thought I'd include it for more of a novelty item than anything, but certainly as a option of something that, if anything, it just makes for a great little letter opener. For what it is, it does feel quite robust, despite how tiny and flimsy it is, or tiny and flimsy it appears. It is quite a good little knife that has come in handy a few times. God knows how much that cost. It came from Italy or somewhere like that, but certainly if you can find that sort of thing, there's an option. We've got the CRKT, this is the Liangma, or Liangma, however you would like to say that. It's the number 5 design. It's the non-serrated version. This was a Henny Haynes edition, which was in bright red. I can't stand that colour. I know the Victorinoxes are, which is why I've changed that one. I've dyed those scales with Rit dye, but it makes for a much better looking UK legal option. It does feel a little flimsy, and I've not been a big fan of this since I've had it. It was one of my first pocket carries when I started collecting properly a couple of years ago. I've had knives since I was reasonably young, but when I got into properly collecting brands and things like that, this was one of the first ones I got just as an option to carry around, but I've certainly outgrown it, I believe. It's not the best option on the table for around £25–30. There are better options than that, but certainly if you like that sort of style and size, it's an option. If you have £30 to spend right now, I would suggest anyone that's watching this go and pick this knife up. Or say £30–35 maybe. This is the new version. It's the Slipjoint version of the CRKT Pilar, or Pilar. It was again bright red, and I've dyed the scales into a dark brown. But for a UK legal option, for something that actually feels really nice in hand, it's something you can choke up on nicely and do a bit of work with. It's beautiful size for the pocket. The blade shape is right up my street. There's a lot of benefits and a lot of nice little touches to this knife. I was considering getting a Pilar when it was the locking version to use for work, and I just never pulled the trigger on it. But as soon as they did the UK legal, I had to go and pick one up, and I'm not disappointed at all. It's a beautiful little knife, certainly one that I would advise anyone with £30–35 to go and get. If you want to spend that sort of money on a knife, that's your one. This is the Effing Grow. It's again a little friction folder, very basic, no sort of holding, no detents, no nothing. It is just friction and that's it. It is quite tight, which you can loosen it up. There's no, you struggle to move that blade from any position, wherever you put it. It really isn't moving. It takes quite a bit of sort of force to move it into position. This one was bought from China. I don't think there is an actual sort of brand that this is copied from. I think this is just the one that there is. It says D2. I very much doubt that it is D2 steel, but it's a good little option. It's something that I plan to do a mod on because it is very thick. When you compare it to some of the other knives on the table, it has a lot of stock, which can feel quite good in the hand. It fills it up quite nicely with thickness, but it doesn't go so well in the pocket. So It hasn't seen a lot of pocket time for that reason. So I'm going to try and get those scales changed over and get something a bit slimmer put on, and see if I can get something a little more user friendly, or certainly more friendly for me. I believe that's around £20 for that one. And then we have the Benchmade Proper, which I know some people might be getting a little bit bored of this because they were very heavily featured over the last year. As a new slip joint knife from Benchmade, a lot of people ran and got them, and a lot of people got fed up of seeing them very quickly. I can appreciate that, but it doesn't stop it being an amazing knife. It is beautiful. The micarta that's on it and everything else, the feel, the finish on it, everything about this knife is just perfect. If you've got £100, £115 to go and spend on a knife, and you're considering like a gentleman's slip joint, this is definitely one to consider. It's a really good knife, and I could sing its praises all day. It finds itself in my pocket probably more than any other knife on this table. Certainly move around here and there, but I always come back to this, especially with the little leather lanyard on the back there, and the little Damascus bead from Grindworks, I believe it is. It just, altogether, it's just a beautiful little bit of kit, and certainly one of my favourites. So that's £100, £115, depending where you buy it from. You can get different versions of scales and things, and even a different blade shape, but personally I don't think there's a better one than that. Then we have the Boker Canoe, which has 2 blades on it. It is a Chinese production one from their Chinese factory, so the fit and finish is a little bit lacking in places, but for a £30 cheap knife, it is still a brilliant little bit of kit. For something that looks a bit vintage and everything else, if you like that sort of style of traditional folder, certainly a good option for something that is so inexpensive. Certainly one that I would advise people to have a look at if you were into this sort of knife, if you're in the market for something in that sort of price range. And then we have the Boker Stockman. Again, this is the Chinese production version. They do 3 similar knives, so they're, well, to my knowledge, they have the Boker Trio, which as I understand is a little bit shorter than this. They've got this, which is the Stockman. Both the Trio and the Stockman are the Chinese versions. This is around £30 to £35. And then they do the American made Stockman, which is double the price. You're looking at £60, £65. The great thing about this, it does have 3 blades on there. Great bit of functionality. My biggest complaint about this knife is, as you may hear, you've got this blade is just a little bit loose. It just doesn't spring like the others, and it just lets it down a little bit, which again, like I say, it came from a Chinese factory. It is endorsed and made by Boker in essence, but it's a little bit rough around the edges. Again, for that sort of style knife, for 3 blades and everything else, it's a good little knife, good little option, but don't expect a perfect knife for that. Then we have the little toy on the table, the Boker Wasabi, which has the little fidget factor to it. It's not locking, it's not spring loaded, it just has a little bolty detent on the side, which gives it the ability that when you put a little bit of pressure on there, it will pop out of that little divot and pop open. So for fidget factor, it does have the little fun playable feature. Again, not bad as a little UK legal gentleman's sort of pocket knife for in a suit or something like that. They do a few different colourways. So this is the Coca Bolo. They do like a black G10, and I think they do a carbon fibre as well. It does feel a little flimsy. Not the best knife in the world. For actual use, I wouldn't put it through anything heavy. but if you're just opening a couple of letters, this would be a good little one for the job. I think this one's around £50. You can get the other colours for about 40, but with this wood it's a little bit more expensive. And then the last one on the table, which is the knife, which I believe there is a little controversy around this. There is a couple of knives which are made by Whitby, which is a UK manufacturer. Now, some of you may straight away look at that and say that looks exactly like the James brand County, I believe it is, and they do look identical, absolutely identical. The difference being that the James brand knife is in the 100 to 150 pound range. This is around 20. I spoke to someone from Whitby who told me that this isn't a copy, they just buy them from the same Chinese factory as what James brand does. I've heard rumours of different things and whatever else, but that's what Whitby told me. Of course, they would defend themselves in that respect. I don't know the full or true story from either side, but that is what I'm led to believe, that they just get them from the same Chinese manufacturers. But obviously, they're the same make, same design. It's just that the quality and the cheaper materials that are used to make the Whitby brand ones allow them to sell them for much cheaper, whereas obviously you get the higher quality steels and everything in the James brand versions. They are not associated with each other in companies, but say that is my interpretation. I could be very much wrong, but that is what I am led to believe. But it's a good little UK legal option, lovely little slip joint, but it's an option. But there we go, guys. I believe that's all of the slip joints I could certainly lay my hands on today. I may have a couple squirreled away in cupboards somewhere, but I hope you've enjoyed the video. Leave any comments below if you've got any more questions about any of these. I'd be happy to give you any dimensions, sizes, or anything like that, if anything is of interest at all. But let me know. Alright guys, thanks, see you again. Cheers.